Hello, everybody. I see some more people in the waiting room. We're going to let them come in as we sort of kick off here, but we're going to get started because we have a lot to get to today. So I want to say hello and welcome back. Today is February 24th. This is TMR Master Advisor Series episode number 47. We're going to be talking about luxury travel today and a number of other things, but I do want to run us through some announcements first very quickly. The first one is to please switch into speaker view for everyone new to these calls. That's going to be the best way to view today's episode, and it's going to be sort of the easiest way to see everyone talking. The next is that the chat on your bottom right is open. I see some people already popping in there. We're going to be grabbing questions as we go along today, like we do every one of these sessions. So please don't be shy. Drop your questions and your comments in there, and we're going to do our best to address almost all of them as we go along today. For everyone who missed the talk about host agencies and choosing the right host agency a couple weeks ago with Avenue 2 Travel's Joshua Bush, it is up and hosted on our YouTube page along with all of our other previous episodes. So you can watch or you can listen to it on demand on your own time. We're going to drop the link in the chat now for anyone who hasn't done so to subscribe if you want to. I know I say this every week, but all these interactions really help us grow this community. So please subscribe if you have a Google email, if you're logged into YouTube. That helps us a whole lot. All right, so that is most of the housekeeping out of the way, but I do want to announce that today's session is sponsored by Explorer Journeys, one of the newest luxury cruise lines in the market. We are very happy to have Amy Price, the head of sales for North America, here to tell us just a little bit about Explorer, its ships, its offerings. I know there's a ton of interest in the line, so I'm very excited to pass it over to Amy right now.
Thanks, Daniel. And for those of you who aren't familiar with us at Explorer Journeys, we definitely are trying to redefine ocean travel and looking for a new generation of those discerning explorers. We will have 4 luxury ships that are being built, the first of which is scheduled to set sail in 2023. She'll be sailing on a remarkable itinerary that will blend not only renowned destinations, but with also lesser traveled ports for journeys that celebrate discovery, which is what we believe our clients are looking for. We'll have 461 all oceanfront suites, all terrace suites, and every guest will enjoy amazing sweeping views with their private terraces while they're being spoiled for choices that we're going to offer on board, such as 9 distinct culinary restaurants that are all inclusive. And we're going to provide a wide variety of choices for those guests on board our ships. And we'll also be introducing a unique luxury travel experience to those who we feel want to explore a bit differently. On top of all of this, though, through the art of listening, we are really leaning into our travel advisor centricity. So it's only fitting that we're sponsoring today's conversation with 2 amazing luxury advisors in the industry who actually have already had great success engaging with us. I'd like to encourage each of you to visit our Travel Advisor Center to learn more and to stay connected with us as we continue to tell more of our story. We are building an amazing new European luxury lifestyle brand that is new and a refreshing product for you to offer your clients. But truth be told, pictures usually speak louder than words. So we do have a quick video of our product that I'd love to share before turning it back over to Daniel.
Again, thank you. Thanks for coming on, Amy. I know you're going to hang around, and you'll be around sort of throughout the session today. We're going to see if we can get the link to the Travel Advisor portal, the Travel Advisor website that you mentioned, and we'll drop it in the chat as we go along today. So whoever wants an introduction to Explore can get one. But again, thank you so much, and yeah, we'll see you a little later in the hour today. So I want to get to the topic of the day. which is luxury travel. And I'm very happy to introduce our two guests for today, Deborah Director, who's a travel advisor at SmartFlyer and Virtuoso, and Angela Pearson, an advisor at Wallace Pearson Travel. Both of them are here today to talk about luxury travel and what their luxury travel clients are considering right now. I have some introductory questions before we get into it, but first I just want to thank both of you for being here and for lending us your time and your expertise today.
Thank you, Daniel.
So I was hoping, I see a lot of comments in the chat. I know there's a lot of people you know in the chat, but I'm sure there's some people on the call you don't know. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourselves, how long you've been in business and what clients you typically serve? And Deborah, I'd love to start with you.
Sure, thank you. So I've been in business just over about 9 years, and I focus on the luxury market. I have a lot of very, very interesting clients. Some people you might see on TV or in the news or in entertainment. Also, a lot of people that are just organic to me, friends of friends, friends of family, and that's how I started my business.
You passed on that pretty quickly. People you may know. You don't want to be specific with that, do you? And set the stage for everyone. No. Okay, fair enough. I just thought I would ask. Angela, I'd love to get sort of give you a little time to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Daniel. I have a little bit of expertise in Ritz-Carlton. That was my background prior to coming to the agency. I've been with the agency for about 20 years now. And the bulk of my personal clients really enjoy the adventure and or immersive travel styles.
Okay. All right. So I do want to concentrate most of this discussion on luxury travel, but I didn't want to miss an opportunity to ask you about sort of what's going on in the world right now, because that seems to be the biggest news story. And both of you mentioned that you've had sort of small bits from clients asking about it. I think by now everyone knows what's happening in Eastern Europe. And again, I don't want to get into the specifics of the situation because it's still very new and it's unfolding extremely quickly. But I was hoping you could both give us just some advice for advisors who are dealing with giant geopolitical events again. How do you approach these things? How do you stay calm? Angela?
I think we just have to really rely on our partners worldwide. I think we all know that things will have to change and we'll roll with the punches. Basically just letting our clients know that we are already in conversations with all of the top executives and keeping a very watchful eye on things, and changes will be made in their best interest.
Yeah. And is that what you're hearing too, Deborah?
So I very much agree with Angela, and I feel if nothing else, COVID was a really good exercise in learning that many situations are evolving. And it's our job as advisors to be monitoring and also in communication with our partners in countries, wherever people may be traveling, and the job of a liaison to communicate information to make sure that everybody stays calm and confident in travel is a very significant role that we have.
Yeah, and I know we have about 115 advisors on the call right now with us, and you both mentioned that you are hearing from clients about this. I'm curious if anyone else in the room is hearing from clients about this already, even though it's probably less than 24 hours old right now. But it is interesting, and it is interesting, Deborah, that you brought up COVID as sort of not a trial run, because that was its own experience in itself, but something that does prepare you for dealing with these big events.
Well, when we have these situations, right, the best that we can do is take from it and learn from it versus just being tortured by it. So it's helpful to just learn and say, okay, well, in this situation, this is what worked well. What can we take from this situation and apply it to the new one so that everybody's calm and collected and confident to travel.
Okay. Yeah. And Angela, anything to add on that end?
No, I think we just all have to really rely on each other, and our clients really respect the relationships that we have, and the fact that when changes need to be made for their best experiences, that's what happens. And if things need to just be shifted date wise or whatever it is, the suppliers are amazing at that already.
Yeah, and I know we all had to sort of become medical experts over the last 2 years. Now maybe everyone's going to be becoming geopolitical experts pretty soon too. I hope that's not the big case, but But it is nice to hear both of you being ready for the challenge and ready to help clients too. And it goes to show you how important advisors are. But I want to shift the conversation now to luxury travel because I know that's why everyone's here today. I'm hoping to kick off the conversation just by asking both of you sort of for your definition of luxury travel. I know we've heard these terms, the new luxury, before. We've heard sort of headlines that luxury travel is changing. But I'm curious what you think luxury travel is, how you define it, and what anything else you want to add. And Angela, can we start with you on this one?
Thank you, Daniel. I think at this point, what we feel like luxury travel is investing more time and money in life experiences. It's not just about the picture perfect destination anymore. It's really about life experiences and that return on investment.
Yeah. Deborah?
I would agree. I think people are willing to pay increased amounts for unique experiential travel, and luxury is really personal at the end of the day. And so I think it's a good thing because I feel like after, I hate to go back to COVID, but after COVID, people really understood that, the ability to travel can't be taken for granted and that they should do what they want and action it as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, just going off of that, you mentioned luxury seems to come from a definition too of high spend, and I'm wondering for both of you, are your clients, are they anxious to spend more money or not anxious? Are they willing to spend more money now than they were spending pre-COVID? Deborah?
Mine are, yeah, for sure. Absolutely, because they can. And, at a certain point, some people have more money than time, perhaps, whether it's because they work so hard or that they have so many of their commitments or they're just advancing in age. And they really want to make sure that they're getting as much in as possible to enjoy with the people that they love and care about.
Okay. And Angela, is that what you're seeing too? I mean, it seems to be a level of, we heard these headlines about people having more savings than ever before during COVID. And then we also heard people very anxious to sort of cross those big trips off their bucket list. And I assume that's still sort of trending.
I definitely think so. I mean, we're selling more Antarctica than we ever have in the past, but we're still seeing a lot of people going back to their favorites in Italy and such because they can have these touring opportunities with no crowds. And I think we're really promoting to do that as much as possible right now, because as the world does open up, and as happy as we are that Australia is opening up and all that kind of thing, it's also going to lend itself to crowds starting to return. So if there's any of those places that are really just extra special to you, now is definitely the time to get that experience while it's extremely private.
Yeah, I mean, just going off of that, we've heard a lot about booking windows changing during COVID. I think I've asked a number of advisors about this. But we heard that booking windows were compressing because people were unsure about the future, maybe 3 to 6 to 9 months later. But people still seem very anxious to get away now. But they also, with the COVID situation, they do seem more comfortable planning in advance. And Angela, is that what your clients are seeing too?
Yes, I think the close-in bookings, people are just kind of on, it's not necessarily that they're uncomfortable traveling. They just are in that wait and see to make sure there's as little amount of change that can happen to their travel as possible. And then other than that, definitely extending out further, partly because there are some really amazing things like Explorer Journeys that haven't ever been an option before, and they're not going to be an option for just a little bit longer. And so we see a lot of the extended planning as well.
Okay. And Deborah, anything to add on that end? I know different clients have different preferences, but I imagine booking windows are sort of normalizing as you go along now.
I feel like they are. I have about, I'm having a very, very busy time now for March to June trips. So that's a shorter lead time than typical, I think. But I think people are excited to go away because they probably haven't been for the majority of the last 2 years, over internationally anyway.
Okay. And I mean, speaking of international, I wanted to ask about destinations that are trending with a luxury client. Angela, you mentioned that people are anxious to return maybe to their favorite destinations. You mentioned Italy, but they're still want to cross those big destinations off their bucket lists. Are there any new destinations that are trending that you hear travelers talking about now? Deborah?
So at this point, I'm pretty much securing everything but Asia for the next 6 months. Anything Asia, Australia, New Zealand, I'm seeing trending towards the end of the year, Q1 of 2023. I think
Okay.
the Asian market's going to be is going to be a longer lead time, I think. It's not
I
over.
mean,
So.
you mentioned Australia. What does the announcement? We had the big announcement about Australia a week or two ago. What does that announcement do to your phone? Like, are you starting to get calls right away once clients start seeing that Australia is a possibility?
Breaking news always leads to a lot of text messages for sure, which is nice, but it's great. I think everyone's really excited to be back together and to see the world open again. And I think that people really now have reprioritized their scale of travel. And I think they're really willing to spend longer amounts of time, do more intensive destination deeper dives, and really make sure that their experience is really, really unique and special.
Yeah. I know I have some messages that we're getting some email sounds. We're going to do our best to figure that out. We'll see if the TMR team can figure that out. But Angela, I want to ask you the same question. Are there any new destinations trending? Anything that's really catching your clients' eyes?
I think, so many people have learned that they can work in school from anywhere these days, that kind of coming back to that, a lot of our clients are really looking for that immersive experience. I think we're seeing a lot more of the extended stays, whether it's, just a different state in our country or as borders are opening. Australia is a huge one for us for those extended journeys. And so we're definitely getting a lot of excitement about the fact that people can look back to returning to Australia.
Yeah, that's interesting. The component that now you can work from anywhere, and I know the pandemic wasn't a positive for the industry at all, and corporate travel is still very much trying to recover. But it does seem like this ability to telework anywhere you want has opened up a new source of clients or a new source of vacation for a lot of the clients. Is that something you're seeing, Angela?
It is. Our family actually did a year-long journey in 2019, early 2020, and I think being able to share those experiences and it's opened up a whole new world and all kinds of different clients that probably typically were DIYers, but for extended journeys, there's so many new and different aspects to it. So yeah, I think that it's a very, very exciting trend that's gaining a lot of speed.
Yeah, I want to ask about the DIYers, but I don't want to miss that the year-long journey you took. Can you tell us a little bit about that? That seems it seems like a once in a lifetime experience.
Well, my children want it to be a second time, but we had a meeting in Australia and decided to take them out of school for the month. And they came back and said, we'll give you all our money if you go for a whole year, not just 1 month. And so we can work from anywhere as well. And we decided to take them up on it, and we saw all 7 continents.
Oh wow, that's something I don't think a lot of people will ever get to do. 7 continents. And was it a full year? Was it 365 days?
Well, we got cut short a little because of COVID, about a month and a half short, but it was pretty darn close. We got all the stops in, just not all the experiences.
Yeah. So Deborah, I just want to get your take on that too. Not on Angela's trip, but on this ability of people to be able to work everywhere and sort of that opening up a possibility for vacations that people would have considered before because of obligations at home. Is that something your clients do they want the opportunity to be able to go somewhere, work for an extended period of time and see the world?
For sure. I actually feel like that's actually the silver lining of COVID. Once we kind of regrouped and understood that we could work remotely, we could do these Zooms, we could do things efficiently from home as well. I think it allows different booking windows and opportunities for family trips because there's more flexibility than, let's just say, President's Week or spring break or over festive. So I really think we're going to see a slight change in trends on what is considered high season, because I think the world is a bit more open now.
Okay. So I see we have a ton of comments in the chat. I'm trying to catch up on all of them. We have a lot of comments about Europe, about what's happening in Europe right now, and it just seems to be a high level of concern from everybody. We also have some comments. Sandra says that she's having a lot of high interest in family and multi-generational travel, which I guess goes back to the bucket list things. Like you when you have an absence of seeing family on vacations that you usually see regularly, it creates a desire to do that, which is an opportunity, I guess, for a lot of travel advisors too. So we have a question from Stephanie Johns in the chat too, and I'm hoping either you want to grab this. That would be great. It's about travel insurance when you're dealing with these longer trips. And I spoke to travel insurance companies this week. It seems to be a case of one size does not fit all with travel insurance. But I'm curious if you have any advice for when you're booking these extended trips when dealing with travel insurance. And Deborah, I was hoping we could maybe get your take on this one.
Sure, sure. So travel insurance, proved to be a bit tricky sometimes, perhaps, right? So the insurance companies recently, probably about a month ago, stopped writing policies within 21 days of travel. So let's just say somebody booked a trip and they were going away in 2 weeks. A lot of these companies stopped writing policies. So that proved to be a bit of a challenge. And I understand it from a business perspective, because if somebody was going to insure a trip on a Tuesday, then they were leaving for on a Friday, and then somebody had COVID and they had to cancel. It's not a sustainable business model. So they stopped doing it. So I think that when advising on insurance, I try to loop in the actual insurance company on the call with the client, because I don't really feel comfortable practicing out of my scope. I'm happy to advise about which companies I feel are solid and reputable, but I always try to loop in the insurance company just to kind of close the gap on any misunderstanding or any miscommunication.
I mean, I'm just curious, what was the solution to that when they did cut that 21 days off? Is it again just what you mentioned, just connecting the insurance company to them?
So I don't know. Sometimes essentially a trip can be uninsurable.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of having to, asking the right questions, seeing what the value proposition of the insurance quote is. Some people, when they insure trips, they don't insure for the whole amount. Sometimes they insure it for part of the amount.
Yeah.
It's a very individual thing, I found.
Yeah, does that make the sale at initial booking for travel insurance easier when you know that is a hard deadline for a lot of these companies?
I think so. What I started advising my clients is that sometimes, the rules, it goes back, I say this every day, probably say it 14 times a day. It's an evolving situation. What the rules are right now in the morning, it could honestly really change in the afternoon. So if somebody's writing a policy and if it is of interest, it is fairly time sensitive.
Okay. And Angela, I'm curious about your experience with travel insurance, because again, I know we're speaking about luxury travel today, but that does seem to be a big topic of conversation amongst advisors almost always. Is that what you're seeing too? Is it just making sure that communication between the client, yourself, and the travel insurance provider is clear and constant?
I do think that's a very big key. We've heard from one of our partners who work with the most on travel insurance that this 21-day thing is not meant to be a long-term. It's because too many people were already testing positive for COVID and at home possibly, and then buying a policy and then canceling when the doctor says they're positive. And so I think we'll see that rule change, not in the too distant future. You can still buy most of the supplier insurance if they're on, if they're with a cruise line or tour operator, that kind of thing. And I think we have about an 80% attachment rate on the insurance. And I think it's gotten a little bit easier, to be honest, because kind of like Deborah was mentioning, the rules are changing. And what we're seeing is more and more countries or companies require that you prove you have this kind of coverage. And some of the insurance companies have already made sure that every single country in the world, the terminology is correct so that their coverage will take care of you if you have to stay. And also, I think you just never know who's going to go bankrupt. And if you have the insurance that covers for that piece of it, I think that can give a good peace of mind. A lot of people have self-insured for years and years, but there's different stakes on the table right now.
Yeah, I think that's both two great answers, and I think it's a lot of things advisors need to consider on a daily basis. So I have questions I definitely want to ask about luxury travel. But I want to ask about qualifying clients, about setting boundaries with the clients, because I know that's important now. But we do have one more question in the chat, and this might be a tough one to answer, but I'm going to see if either of you are interested in answering it anyway. Sandy says that she feels the pandemic did not affect her affluent clients in terms of their travel spend moving forward. She wants to know sort of what impact the world markets, especially with the recent developments, have when it comes to affluence travel's disposable income. And do you ever feel like that's impacting booking or spend when you're talking to these clients? Is that something you see, Deborah?
No, well, actually, I had a little bit of a different experience in the pandemic because my top tier clients actually they might have their own planes or they might have their own homes, and in the pandemic, they were flying on their own plane to their different homes around the world. So that actually impacted my business a lot. But that's just, that's a small percentage of my clients. Not all of my clients have that. But the other trends I did see in travel were that people who were first class flyers would perhaps actually charter a jet where they would never do that before, or people who were staying in hotel suites would now go to a villa with larger bedrooms that they could all congregate in their opinion safely and at a resort. So I did see some different trends, and it was really interesting.
Yeah. All right. So let's get back to the topic. We have about 20 minutes, give or take a couple minutes left. So I don't want to get too far off topic. But I do want to ask about how you both have been super successful in attracting a luxury clientele. We had a recent advisor on who gave us some tips on how she built a big luxury clientele. But I'm wondering if either you have advice for advisors who maybe have a mass market client right now and want to move upwards, obviously because that benefits them and their business. So if you have any tips do you have any tips for attracting that luxury clientele? And Angela, can we start with you on this one?
Yes, thank you, Daniel. I think what we've found is it's all about relationships. One of my largest clients ever started off, maybe she'd do a Lindblad here and there, one or two a year or something. Now it's more like $120,000 or $200,000 bookings a couple of times a year, because I would pick up the phone and speak to her just randomly, just to check on how things were going. It wasn't always a work situation. And therefore, once there's that trust and relationship, then the referrals are usually pretty spectacular. We also have some very, very strong relationships with the executives of the travel companies that we work with the most. And so we also spend a lot of time doing educational events. We pair up with some really cool nonprofits, and so they benefit from our events financially, which also then sometimes entices them to share our details with all of their major donors and that kind of thing. So I think you just get creative with relationships can make a huge difference.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, this is what our previous advisor told us, and I know there's a lot of advice out there when it comes to social media, when it comes to email marketing, SEO, things like that. But it does seem to come down to word of mouth referrals are always going to be the strongest source of clients. And Deborah, I see you nodding your head. Is that what you feel too?
Yeah, for sure. I also feel like, as Angela mentioned, it's very important to have solid relationships with your suppliers, and it shows in the booking process and also during the actualization of a trip, I feel. The other thing is I really feel like the high net worth clients or your luxury clients want to identify with their advisor. They want something that they really feel like they have a kinship with, that we like the same things, we might eat at the same places, we might like the same design. They want to identify with their advisor so they feel like they're connected.
Does that just come down to when you get that introduction or at an initial qualification process, just figuring out what they like, what drives them, what gets them up in the morning, things like that? Like, is that how you start building those relationships, Deborah?
Well, I do. Like, so for example, if someone's asking me for a new destination to them, I might say to them, what's your favorite hotel, let's say in New York or LA, just so I can get a sense of their design aesthetic, their style, the level of service, and then I can kind of match make, but I need to have a bit of a baseline. And then if I like the property also, or I know somebody there, then I try to relate an experience that they might have also had at that hotel or property, and then kind of just connect the dots.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I had never heard about your favorite hotel in New York or LA, which I guess there's a lot There's a lot of iconic hotels in both those cities, but that's an interesting question to sort of gauge how people's personalities are.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Angela, so on your end, what are you doing to qualifying clients, or I guess how are you building your relationships with your clients and sort of placing them where they expect to be placed?
I think kind of similar. I like to ask them what have been their favorite trips in the past, and also what trips do they wish they would have changed? What things went wrong? What did they not enjoy? I think that tells you a lot about what's important about a trip to them. It may or may not be the accommodations. It might have everything to do with their guide, or it might have to do with just how crazy active can I be? I'm not as big into the culture, or it's, I think one of the things that probably you finally get that aha moment when you're in sales of how to sell based on what they will enjoy, not how you enjoy to travel. But being in all the different destinations, at least you can kind of have some real life experiences that will tie in regardless of how they enjoy in a destination.
Yeah, and again, I know there's so many different approaches to that initial introduction to a client, and we've spoken about this a number of times on this series. But those are two very unique questions to ask, and I think a lot of advisors on the call are going to like hearing about those. If there's anyone else who has any interesting first initial questions, drop them in the chat, and we'll share them. We'll see if we can sort of get a thread going. But I want to ask about engaging luxury clientele, because that's what I've heard before is a big thing with high end clients, is that some of them maybe want to be spoken to a lot, some of them maybe want to be spoken to very little. I know it's arranged with almost every segment in the industry, but I'm wondering if either of you, and Angela, we can start with you on this one, if either of you have tips for engaging with luxury clientele. Does it just come down to figuring out how they want to be communicated with, or is there a way that people who are spending big amounts of money typically like to be communicated with?
I definitely think you have to get to understand their preferred method of communication. Obviously, if all I do is call and all they do is text, or all they do is email, we're not going to mesh well. So I definitely pay attention to that. I also think it's really important to kind of educate them on why, perhaps if they send a text, I follow up in an email. And the other thing that our teams worked really hard on, and honestly, the pandemic kind of helped this, is we let everyone know that we operate based on appointments. And that way, if someone does have a question, they typically send a text or an email, and then I give them options of when I'm available, and we set a time to either have a conversation or get the details in an email so that I can get the information back to them in a timely manner.
Yeah, Deborah, you mentioned that too. That you tend to, when you get texts from clients, you tend to try to create an email thread off of that and move that conversation.
Sure. So I have a couple of admins that assist me, and it's very hard. I mean, I get text messages, Instagram messages, Facebook messages, phone calls, and my team can't track it unless it's an email. So what I try to do is acknowledge a text, transfer it to an email, and just nicely say, hi, everyone, just transferring this to email just so that my team can track, because I'll be traveling or I'll be speaking at a conference, or, name your reason of why I might miss something. And so but I try not to. So I try to log it, and they understand, and, they'll still text me, but I'll still transfer it to email. It's work in progress.
So we just have a quick question in the chat. Is that, I guess an advisor wants to know just a sense of how big both of your teams are. And Deborah, I know you mentioned you have a few administrative assistants.
Yeah. I've got 2 EAs, and I have 5 agents that work with me.
Okay. And Angela?
We have a support team of 4, and then we have 10 advisors. And I think that's one other little note that I would kind of add on to what Deborah was saying is, if people know that you work as a team, it can be even that much easier to talk them into communicating via email, because they can copy both of you and get the most timely responses that way.
Okay. And yes, we see a lot of people in the chat. We have a question for you, Angela, that I'm going to grab. It came from Facebook, actually. But I just want to bounce off that, because this is something that advisors are dealing with now as business picks back up. which is obviously a good thing. But there does seem to be a conversation building around setting boundaries with the clients. And is that something that both of you sort of are passionate about? I know the job can seem like a 24/7 job, but setting boundaries with the clients seem to be something that's trending among travel advisors now. It seems to be something people are asking advice about. And I was curious if either of you have any tips. Deborah, we can start with you on this one.
I'm a work in progress with this. I'm trying to be better because it's, it is important to have some work-life balance for sure. I mean, I could probably work 24 hours a day and still not be ahead of what I need to do in any given day, which is great because it's a good problem to have in terms of business. And I'm thankful and fortunate. But at the same point, when you're flying an airplane, they say, in the event of a situation, you also do need to put on your own oxygen mask on first. So, I have to also take time for myself to use that Peloton and, and also just try to make some time to see my friends and my family also. I'm trying, getting better.
Angela, is it a work in progress for you too?
I think a lot of us probably fell into the pit during the height of the pandemic of almost like in a panic to stay connected with our clients. And so, anytime anyone sent an email or a text, it was Johnny on the spot because you want to stay really connected and make sure everybody feels okay and that kind of thing. As we've started coming out the other side of it and feeling a lot more like humans again, I think most of us have realized, whether it's because of 8 million Zooms a day or whatever else, we are all humans. We do have animals, we do have children, we do have spouses, whatever the case might be. And I think it's actually makes you more relatable and enjoyable for them to realize, I will be happy to talk to you tomorrow. I'm running off to a soccer game, or, we're humans and we live a life. And I think that can actually strengthen the relationships even more.
Yeah. I think, again, like you both have mentioned, it might go back to sort of building those relationships. And when people see you more of actual person, actual partner in your travel process, as opposed to an Expedia, I think that sort of helps that train of thought. But Angela, we did have this question in from Facebook chat, and we're hoping you could maybe give us an answer. Cheryl Wilson Hammerly she said, could you elaborate or give an example of the events that your agency does with nonprofits to promote awareness, education, etc.?
Absolutely. So my husband and I mentioned both have a background from the Ritz-Carlton, and the Ritz-Carlton Amelia Island specifically supports the local Boys and Girls Club. So we found ourselves doing a lot of volunteering and that type of thing. And you get to a point where you finally realize you're spreading everything so thin, you're not really helping anyone. So we decided to focus specifically on our local Boys and Girls Clubs here in Nassau County. So when we have events, the clients pay an entrance fee, and that goes directly to the nonprofit. It does not come to Wallace Pearson Travel. So it's a fundraiser for our nonprofit of choice. And then they assist us with volunteers for registration desks and things like that at the events. But then also, like I mentioned, share all of our details with their donors, major donors.
Okay. So we have a little more than 5 minutes left. I see some more questions in the chat. I'm going to grab this one from Bridget, and then we might be able to have time for one more. I have a couple of more ones I want to get to as well. But Bridget wants to know about this. Again, this is a topic that comes up almost every one of these sessions, but she wants to know about fees. Neither of you are sort of expected to get super specific with this, but Bridget just basically wants to know how much are your fees when you have these high-end clients. And just before you answer, we did have a former member of the show, a former attendee of the show, who does luxury clients say she doesn't charge a fee with luxury clients simply because they're already spending so much. But I'm curious if either of you have any advice. And Deborah, if you want to kick us off on this one.
So I typically do not actually charge fees. It hasn't been my business model historically. Somebody recently asked me to do some things that I really didn't really want to do. They wanted me to help them book some, I don't know, like an itinerary on some points. And I said, that's not what I do. And they said, well, we really want you to do it. And I said, well, if you're not going to be doing the hotels with me, I'm going to have to charge you a planning fee. And And they said, no problem. I wouldn't even say, oh, okay, no, thanks, I'll do it myself. But they said, no problem. So I'm in the middle of actually doing this itinerary and just for a planning fee, but it's really a one-off. It's not something that I typically do.
And does it just go back to that, just because of the spend is already so high that, I mean, adding a planning fee on top of that's just kind of not something you would want
I
to
think
do?
it's a very good conversation and one that would probably take a lot more time. I mean, if you look at other industries, lawyers, accountants, decorators, they all get paid whether something actualizes or not. Travel agents don't typically. So there is, especially after the pandemic, 2020, where we spent so much time curating these perfect, wonderful trips and then undoing them and then making sure that all of our clients were made whole. It's a tricky situation because essentially, if people who didn't charge fees, which is I fall into that camp, work twice to make essentially zero.
Angela, anything to add on that end? I mean, again, as comfortable as you feel like talking about your planning fee, I'm curious again if it's something you're passionate about.
Thank you. Yes, it's an evolving process for our team. We've been charging fees for quite some time now. In 2020, we kind of were at a option. We wanted clients to have choice, and so we had an a la carte option, we had an inclusive option, and that type of thing. What we found is that in order for our team to really streamline a process and not end up dropping anything through any cracks, we really need to be consistent on all bookings. And so we did away with our a la carte option. I think as long as you spend a little bit of time educating the clients as to what you're doing for that and all the things that go into the planning process and all of that kind of thing. I mean, we really haven't ever had anyone bat an eye at them. We do typically for, escorted group or cruise, it usually starts at $300 per room, per accommodation. And if it's international and independent, we start at 500. And I think it just helps the client realize that you're working on their behalf and you're an actual travel professional that they can trust to steer them in the right direction based on them, not based on who's paying you the best commissions.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think both those are great examples of just how different businesses are in this industry. And again, I just want to plug that we've done a ton of sessions on fees on this series. So if you want to check them out, they're all hosted on our YouTube, which has been dropped into the chat. And you mentioned we were talking events with Angela. We've had Kareem George on here a couple of times talking about building events and things like that. So again, that's another one. If you're looking for more information on that, you can check that out. So we think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. If anyone else has one more, you can drop them in the chat. But I do want to ask you this, because this was trending pretty heavily before COVID, and it seemed to be sort of put on the back burner as the world got turned upside down. But I read a recent study that this was trending, that sustainability was trending with luxury clients, which they want to travel a bit more responsibly going forward. And I'm wondering if that's something that is important to your luxury clients. Are they wondering about sustainability, or is that sort of still might be an afterthought when they're booking their vacation? And Deborah, can we start with you on this one?
Sure. It's probably not the top of my particular clients list. I think it's important, everybody wants to be responsible, but I don't think that they would select a destination or an option necessarily because of it. If there's 2 things and all things being equal and one option was perhaps more sustainable, that would be enticing, but I don't think that they'll do it based on that reason.
Okay. And Angela, is that the same thing sort of you're experiencing?
Well, what we've noticed in doing some polls and such, it's about 30% of the travelers really have that as a big pressing matter. What I would like to say is I give a huge congratulations to the suppliers that are taking the time and spending the money to promote their sustainability story, because I think it is important to people. I just don't think they have any idea it relates to their travel experiences. And when they realize that additional feel good that they get from realizing this spectacular experience they had is also sustainable and good for the earth, I mean, I think it's going to be a really hugely growing trend.
Yeah, and I imagine, I mean, 5 years ago, it was probably less of a topic of conversation. So maybe it's just what you said, Angela, it's on the uptrend, and that sort of will continue, even though it might seem small now. Maybe in the future, it's something to keep an eye on. So we have a few minutes left. I want to sort of give both of you a chance to wrap up here before we let everyone go. I also want to give Amy a chance to jump back in here in a couple of minutes too. But I want to thank you both for joining us today. I know we jumped around a lot and we covered a lot of territory, but I think we had a lot of important conversations. But if there's anything else you want to add, any other advice or tips, please feel free. Deborah, if you want to start first on this one.
Oh, no, just want to thank everybody for coming. This is really great to be able to connect and to hear how Angela does things. It's really nice because that's the beauty of our business, right? We have lots of individual personalities and styles, and that's why everybody has their own client base, because they go with who matches them nicely. So it's really great to have the option and the flexibility to be an individual in this field.
Yeah, and I know, again, I know we were talking about luxury today, and I know that seems like a small segment of the industry, but the ranges of possibilities, just talking to both of you today, it's hugely wide, and it's not going to be one size fit all. But Angela, anything on your end you want to add? Any sort of last thoughts here?
I'm just really excited about where travel is headed. I love the conscious comeback that so many of the travel advisors, so many of the suppliers, and I think a bulk of the travelers have opened eyes and are really excited about where travel is going to take our beautiful earth. And I think we can do a lot of great things for and with each other. And I would certainly highly suggest that you all continue with the fee side of things. We earned 30% of our income in 2021 was based on fees. And I think as we all continue to move in that professional travel sector, I think that it's going to be really welcomed and it'll help weed out some that aren't.
Yeah. So again, Deborah and Angela, thank you so much for joining us today. I also want to thank Amy, who's back on the call. Amy, any last thoughts from you?
And I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. I thought everything that Angela and Deborah had to say was very insightful, and I especially loved the comments regarding leaning into your supplier relationships and your partnerships. We are all about that, and we hope that not only will you see that we've leaned into those travel advisor connections, but we hope that you will lean back on us. So I've provided my email in there if anybody wants to connect personally, and I've also provided the link to connect to our Travel Advisor Center. So thank you for the opportunity, and great to see Angela and Deborah and you, Daniel, as well.
Yeah. All right. So thank you again, Amy. Again, her email's in the chat right now if you want to grab that before we close the Zoom. But again, thank you all so much for joining us here today. I know these are every 2 weeks and sometimes they pop up on your schedule at inopportune times, but I really appreciate everyone coming out and providing comments in the chat, especially with the ongoing situation in Europe. It was nice to hear everyone's perspective on that. So we'll be back in 2 weeks, so please keep an eye out for more registration emails. But until then, I hope everyone sort of has a great rest of your week and a great weekend, and we'll see you all very soon.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.